And we're going to be taking some testimony in regards to the land access and opportunity from the Land Access and Opportunity Board. And we will start off this morning. I want to welcome you all to the meeting. And we'll introduce ourselves, right?
Yep, Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Brian Campion, good to see you from Lincoln County District.
And Bobby Starr from the Orleans District. And Kristen, you're going to be the lead off this morning.
That is the plan, yes.
Yeah. Well, that'd be good. And then if we have questions, we'll just ask them of you.
Sure, okay.
Kind of run as an informal meeting as possible, so that everybody gets heard and questions get answered.
Great.
And so welcome.
All right,
And
thank you.
so you could introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Senator Starr, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you on a Friday morning when the legislature is so incredibly busy. For the record, I'm Kirsten Murphy. I am the executive director of what's called the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. So I'll just say a couple of words about that. I was in your committee, I want to say maybe 6 weeks ago during some sort of awareness day around farms, and briefly talked about the Land Access Opportunity Board, but I am going to give you a little bit more background on that today.
Yeah.
So just to say a little bit more about who I am. The Developmental Disabilities Council is a creature of federal law. We were created by the federal government and funded by Congress in order to work on policy that will promote the full inclusion and opportunities for people with developmental disabilities. So you can think of those as maybe the most significant types of cognitive type of disabilities often. So I report to a public board, and I always like to say when I testify that even though we are housed in the Agency of Human Services, I have a special agreement that allows me to talk to the legislature without any formal permission through the Agency of Human Services. I speak solely on behalf of the council. So it has been my honor to serve on the Land Access Opportunity Board for not quite a year. That is an entity created by the legislature last year through H 273. And I want to say first that this has been, I sit on a lot of public boards, and this has been remarkable for the seriousness of purpose and the professionalism that the group brings to this work of land justice. I thought maybe I would just start with a story because that would help me feel calmer. So I'm going to tell you about someone who is part of the reason that I think land access ownership is so important. So on my board, I have a gentleman. He receives developmental disability services, so he has quite a significant intellectual disability. He has worked since he was 16 in the food service industry. He works at a retirement community right now. He makes beautiful platters of food. He's about my age. And he's always joking that my suitcase should have wheels on it, he says to me, because he has to move so often. Housing discrimination for people with disabilities is very common, my friends at Legal Aid tell me. And my friend, she's from the Ferrisburg area, is constantly subject to needing to change apartments and readjust his life and figure out how he can be close enough to work and get transportation to work. And what's remarkable to me is this gentleman has worked since he was 16. And he has a small business on the side selling antiques. And this is the kind of person that, like, in our American community, we think of as being a homeowner by that age. And yet programs that we have that support people to own land and homes tend to be pretty, they're inaccessible to people like my friend. So that's part of what drove me to say, yes, I really want to see on this 13-person board.
Did you find him a home? He's still
He's
rolling his
He's
suitcase.
still rolling his suitcase, but he's on my list to solve that problem. So the focus of the Land Access Opportunity Board is to promote racial and social equity in land access and property ownership, including ownership of agricultural lands. As part of a broader mission that the legislature has taken on to eradicate forms of systemic oppression. So whether we're talking about systemic racism, systemic ableism, systemic homophobia, we're talking about ways in which existing programs and policies kind of have hard baked into them assumptions that work to the detriment of certain marginalized groups. So the work of the Land Access Opportunity Board is connected, and we stay in touch with other boards and efforts that the legislature has also put forward. I doubly serve on the Health Equity Advisory Commission. So we're trying to take a broad look at ensuring that groups like people with developmental disabilities, racially marginalized groups, have full access to all the goods of our life here in Vermont.
Do we appropriate funds to you folks to help find homes and housing?
So yeah, so the Land Access Opportunity Board is not even met for a full year. We are very, very hopeful that our first budget request, which is for $1.2 million, is going to come through. It's in both the House and the Senate budget, so we think it will survive conference, and that will allow us to hire just a small amount of staff and begin the process of creating an organizational infrastructure that moves money to organizations that address the barriers to land and home ownership that people like my friend from Harrisburg face.
Yeah.
It's not a huge appropriation. I know the legislature can't really appropriate money in the future, but we're hoping that that's kind of a sustained 4-year investment of 4.8 million, so that this organization, which is housed in the Housing and Conservation Board administratively, which gives us a level of, again, professionalism that I haven't always seen on some of the other public boards I serve on. We've been very, very well served by the Housing and Conservation Board and intend to stay there. So yes, that's our intent, is to begin that work now that we've handed in our Sunrise report, which is available to you, and hopefully survive the first round of budget appropriations.
Well, if it made it through the House, and we did talk about that in the Senate appropriations, and that's gone to conference now, and I think that part is safe because both sides passed the bill with that in it.
That's my understanding.
And the Housing Conservation Board, we work a lot with Gus Seelick and his crew. And hopefully by next year, you'd have some positive feedback how this has helped and what it has done, and that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, that's really absolutely our hope. I am impressed with how quickly this board has moved to get the Sunrise report done, get an appropriation. We already made our first hire to support the board's work so that we can really get to the business. But the public reminds us at every single meeting is moving forward with reviewing state policies and programs and moving opportunities and money to organizations that are going to address these deficits in land access. I'm not going to take a ton more of your time. I wanted to share one other story. I'm sorry that Senator Lessman isn't here because it's from his district. But again, another example a family that lives in Warren County, and mom is a single mom about my age. She has 4 children, 2 of them with disabilities, but one with a very significant disability. He has autism, does not have a lot of spoken language. And she has raised her family on a small farm. She herself is a horsewoman. She's taken care of rescue horses all her life. She has MS now, so can't do that work anymore. But her fervent desire is to leave this small farm to her son, who enjoys the physical work of farm labor. And she's gradually building berry bushes around, patches of berry bushes on the land, so that there's a small business for her son, who really isn't someone who's going to fit in a traditional job situation. And yet, I believe all people can work, and that's a very meaningful part of adult life. But there are so many barriers for this family to try to figure out how she can leave the land to him, how he can be supported and hold the title to that land. He does receive some services, but the systems are just not set up well to make that happen. So again, this is why I'm so committed, along with members of the Racial Justice Alliance, the Pride Center, the Collective, other representatives on the board, to doing this work, so that one of the very best things about Vermont life can be available to people like this family in Well County.
Oh, that would be, is it the boy that has the autism? But those young people there's certain functions that they can really do well.
Yep.
And
I have 2 children who are adults now who have autism.
yeah,
Varies a lot, but yes, very capable people.
yeah. And I know I have some 2 nephews that have autism. I mean, one of the boys, he can't, a young man now, can't tie his own shoes, but he can play the piano beautiful.
My son is a electrical engineer. Actually, he gets motor plan very effectively. He does not drive, but he is an electrical engineer and fully self-supporting.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Do just piano like that.
That's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, really nice young guy. Well, any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's what his colleagues
And
this time.
will Ashley, are you next?
Yes, I can be.
Welcome, Ellen. I want to introduce our 4th member, Irene Wiener. Welcome up in northern Chittenden County, I guess it is.
Yeah, sorry I was late.
So, anyways, Irene, right? Essay. So Ashley, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, Senator Starr and members of the Senate Agriculture Committee. My name is Ashley Devereaux and I live in Salisbury. I'm a member of the Land Access and Opportunity Board. I serve as an alternate on the board representing the National Association of Social Workers. I'd first like to extend my thanks for the chance to speak in front of you this morning and for your support of the LAOB thus far. Though I'm just starting out in the field of social work, the number of individuals I've encountered that are experiencing significant barriers to securing housing and to home and land ownership has struck a chord for me. I've supported a single mom in recovery who got a job on a farm so that she could have stable housing and income, just to find out that the housing was almost uninhabitable and then have the housing destroyed in a recent storm. I've worked with a single mother of 4 who has lived in the same 2-bedroom apartment for half a decade. She dreams of each of her children having their own bedroom, but home ownership has thus far been unattainable for her, as she is unable to work due to her own disabilities and the lack of support she has in caring for her children. She sleeps in the living room with her youngest child. The population I serve is often low income and experiencing generational trauma, mental illness, addiction, among other things. The population lacks the opportunities and access to adequate housing in relation to their needs, homeownership, and land ownership that those from privileged backgrounds experience. And this is why the LAOB is important. The LAOB seeks to center the experiences of marginalized groups, BIPOC, individuals with disabilities, low-income families, those battling addiction and mental illness, etc. When we seek to understand the experiences of our most disenfranchised neighbors, we create an opportunity for change. Your continued support for the LAOB will allow the board to assess current housing policies, track disparities, develop programs that break down barriers to home and land ownership, and collaborate with our lawmakers to create a more equitable system. So please let me first state that on behalf of the board, I would like to extend our immense gratitude for the inclusion of a $1.2 million appropriation for the LAOB in this year's budget. I would also like to draw your attention to the Sunrise Report created and submitted by the LAOB on the February 15th of this year, which states that in order for the LAOB to engage in the work this board was created to do, we require an annual baseline budget of $1.2 million. It is critical to ensure that this board can continue its important work and achieve future success by committing to continue funding this board in future sessions. In addition, the board asks for your continued support as we work towards creating equitable opportunities, both for the marginalized and disenfranchised groups we serve and for the individuals who engage in this work. It's for this reason that the LAOB also requests that the General Assembly amend existing statute regarding compensation for board members to establish an hourly rate of $50 with a cap of 15 hours per month per member to be compensated at this rate for board meetings, special meetings, subcommittees, and working groups. We also ask that the state per diem cover projects, prep, and other work outside of designated board meetings, and look forward to continued conversations regarding this statute with our legislatures. We all know the work of the LAOB is important, and the stories I shared are why I'm here advocating for its continued support. So on behalf of the LAOB, we look forward to partnering with you on all future legislation regarding housing and land access. Thank you again for your time and your support of the LAOB.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
So where did you say you work out of, Ashley?
So I am a rostered social worker. I'm working towards my license in clinical social work.
Yeah. So you've been working with the board or on the board since last year, or?
I am a new member on the board. I joined several months ago as the alternate. Lynn Stanley, the executive director of the NASW, she had to step down due to some other engagements that kept her from being able to be at the board meetings. So I serve now as the alternate in that position. I attend bi-weekly meetings though.
Yeah, yeah. Questions? Well, thank you for being with us. We'll move on to Buster. Morning, Buster, and then maybe we'll have some other questions as we move.
Good morning.
Morning.
You can hear me okay? Good morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for this time, leaders. Senator Starr, Chair. Some of you may have heard my voices over the last several years. I know Senator Starr is one of them, and he's one of few that will email me. And over time, I even used to get personal letters. But those are rare things from our representatives. And The Land Access and Opportunity Board is new and it's unique and it's beautiful because it's just become formed. An organization takes at least a year to get its feet wet. And when you're a board member, a new board member of an organization, keeping in mind that this is a new board. So when you are a new board member of any organization, it really takes you a year to get your foot wet and get established in doing the work you are set out to do. And that's what the board, Land Access and Opportunity Board is doing right now. And over its progress, with your support ongoing, you will see its work over and over again, much like you hear from many organizations. And by the way, my name is commonly known as Buster Caswell, Ernest Caswell. I wear many hats, many shoes, like many folks. I'm an agricultural worker. I'm also a part of a family farm. My brother and his partners ship milk to the Vermont Creamery. And I'm also a volunteer and a board member of a not-for-profit organization known as Pathstone. And we do the National Farm Workers Jobs Program here in Vermont. I am not a staff of any of those. I am not a voice of any of those. I'm just a citizen. And I appreciate you taking this opportunity to hear from our citizens and our farmers. Quite often we feel unfortunately left out, and that Land Access and Opportunity Board is not going to do that. They are going to invite everybody in all the time. And something that I've been working on since at least and before 2019. And then we all know COVID hit. Oh, COVID hit us hard. And farm workers were called essential workers. And sometimes those essential workers feel like they are left out. And here in our great state of Vermont, our housing is in crisis, and our farm workers and our farmers need a home. And over the last few years, there has been a group dedicated and focused on farm worker housing. We need to formulate a group specific, and perhaps the Land Access and Opportunity will continue to suggest this today and ongoing. And I know Senator Starr knows that the farm workers stakeholders group that he heard a little bit, it started in November before COVID, and it lasted, and it's ongoing. We need to formulate that. Great states like Oregon have committees focused on farm worker housing, because farm worker housing is about the most challenging subject you can talk about, much like our farm labor is the most challenging subject to talk about. So I ask you to formulate that farm workers stakeholder group. And you're not going to find that in the 2020 Vermont Housing Needs Assessment. So I would not utilize the Vermont Housing Needs Assessment 2020. I would look at today's version that talks about the farm worker housing program and developing farm worker housing on and off the farm, because our agricultural heritage, much like other states across the countries, have already done those things. Vermont needs it too, and we need to focus on farm worker housing. So formulate a farm worker housing group, much like Dan Baker at UVM and Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, Champlain Housing Trust, Efficiency of Vermont, and I could name 20 others that have taken part in those meetings that have led to the work today. And we also need to engage with the USDA, because they are an underutilized tool, and they have technical support grants to do the exact work that I suggest, because our farms need technical support. They need a housing organization that will work for our farms in collaboration with other housing organizations. And the group and the committee formulated, much like Oregon, there's a committee, there's Washington, there's Indiana, where there's group, and they're tasked like that. They were developed years ago, and they're on that today. And we also need the Land Access and Opportunities Board's work. So please ask any questions. And if you're not aware about the great purpose of a farm worker housing stakeholder group or committee or a team or whatever you may have call it, being permanently formulated, look at outside states. And I've sent in documents where those things are happening, and we need that here in Vermont on the agriculture side and for the housing side. And for everybody, the Land Access and Opportunity Board can suggest that in their ongoing and efforts and work with your support. And thank you for your time, leaders. And I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Buster. I know we go back quite a ways when we first started on the farm worker housing issue, and is Champlain Housing, they're doing a good job, do you think, getting these houses up and going for those folks?
Yes, they're doing great work. Efficiency Vermont's doing great work. Dan Baker's doing great work. And there's so many others that are tied to it because of the health and the safety and the great need of housing in Vermont. So their work needs to be ongoing and committed. And the committee like Dan Baker facilitating such a group and getting it permanently formulated, because so many people, they have the will. It's just a matter of utilizing all those tools and making it formulated permanently. It can be done. It's a matter of doing it. The Land Access and Opportunity Board, they were created to serve everyone who's here in the past, in the centuries, histories, and also today and in the future. So the Land Access and Opportunity Board does many unique things. And so doesn't the farm worker housing stakeholder group that can be found and discussed about all over. And they're doing great work.
Yeah. Well, one thing, we got a little path forward that is working quite well with that farm labor housing. And Gus Seelick and VHCB, of course, are the ones behind that. And with
Yes,
our new organization working out of the same basic office,
yes.
how we should get some movement in a real positive direction. And, I've worked with Gus from the beginning, really. And any job that we've ever asked Gus to deal with, it's been dealt with very professionally and efficiently. And he just seems to be able to attract the right people to get the job done. And it has gone well.
I forgot to mention support the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, because they were very helpful in establishing the report as well. Sorry to interrupt, Senator Starr, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
So are there questions from the committee?
No, it's very helpful. Yeah.
Irene?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ernest, you mentioned getting tech support from USDA. Sometimes it's hard for the state and the USDA to communicate. And I'm wondering, is it technical support around farming itself or around some of these housing issues? Can you just help me understand?
Sure. The USDA has really, I'm going to say at least 29 different unique branches. Okay. One section is under rural development, farm worker housing, and there's also grants and technical support through the USDA that could be utilized. For example, perhaps Vermont Housing Conservation Board could utilize those. UVM could utilize those. Perhaps Champlain Housing Trust could utilize those. And that technical support, and I actually got an email recently about the technical support coming out from the USDA and how it can be used in a variety of things, because it's about, USDA is about agriculture. So it does technical support for creating such a committee, people who are tasked, and then on top of that, it provides technical support that organizations can utilize for our farms. And there's specific farm worker housing. You can find those if you reach the highest level of our USDA administration. Stop at the highest level of our USDA housing administration and ask for those resources and ask how they can utilize, very important, how can our organizations in Vermont utilize the USDA grants, technical support, support for our nonprofits, support for our farms. The USDA is agriculture. So when these resources are utilized, and they're rarely used right now, but when they're utilized, great things happen. And organizations across the country utilize the technical support. And as a board member of a nonprofit organization that's in 9 states and Puerto Rico, we are not a housing organization in Vermont, but we are in other states. And so our organization utilizes every resource available, including the USDA support, because there's various areas. You just have to know how to use those tools. When they're utilized elsewhere, we need to utilize them more here in Vermont, please.
Yeah,
Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, when Brady, what's Brady's first name?
Ted.
Ted, when Ted Brady was running that whole organization, that's when we gave Gus some money to set up the Ready program. Where, because Ted kept telling us, well, Vermont's sending back millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars. So the Ag
Right,
Committee
right.
set up a deal with Gus Seelick, the Ready program, to just sit there and write grants to capture that.
And if I may, part of what we're trying to do is create uses for that money among non-traditional populations that haven't felt welcome to accessing some of those programs. Great audience to funnel that Department of Ag federal money to, right? But BIPOC Vermonters for whom English isn't their first language, people with disabilities, other non-traditional and marginalized groups don't necessarily feel they can access these types of housing programs. And so we're going to try to
Right, right,
bridge that.
I wonder,
right.
does that need tweaking a little bit to allow you people to apply? Do you think to the Ready program? Or
We're going to do a systemic review of the housing and land access programs in the state to see where they might need tweaking in order to make them welcoming to non-traditional audiences. Yes.
because I know what we did is put in small communities. I know they are in under 5,000 people because they don't usually have full-time administrators. But we could put in you folks, say the farm housing thing is in there.
I think next session, we're going to have some specific asks after we do our systemic review of housing and land access programs. And we really also, I think I forgot to say that I want you to think of the Land Access Opportunity Board as a resource for you. I mean, we don't need more boards and commissions in Vermont, but we exist and we can help in your land justice work. We want to be part of that.
Do you think you're gonna have that work completed to some extent by next winter?
The review, yes. That is our
Because
intent.
it would be,
That's
I
what's
think
on my
it
table.
would be very helpful to us if you came back, say in January, and said, well, if you tweak this language so it said this, or bring in your suggestions and we could get Gus in and our attorney to write the language up in a professional way to allow you folks to apply for, grants and things that are sitting there. Because, as hard as
Right.
it is to earn money, if it's sitting there and it's all we need to do is know how to ask for it.
I'm gonna take this as an invitation and we would really welcome coming back in January with some.
Yeah, and, we can make a note of it too, and, so I think the committee, everybody here in Montpelier is here to help people, I assume. And if, I wonder someday. But if we, if we could help with something like that, it would be just great. And we're using money that's gonna get shipped out of here if we don't. No.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta be on the floor in a little bit, and so I wanna thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And
Thank you.
Buster, you keep working.
Yes, sir. And invite us back, please, so we can keep you up in the loop, especially the people doing the work. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time, leaders.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck
Yeah,
with the
thank
end
you.
session,
Thanks.
everyone.